Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. We are coming here from our blank canvas and the cleanest kitchen in the sphere. How you feeling today, Mansoor?
I'm feeling great, man. I always love the fact when someone compliments me for my clean kitchen because it's just a facade, and I don't want to, show on camera what my actual state of my house is. But uh, gives the idea that I'm clean and tidy.
That is
It's
certainly
been
not
boring without
true.
football.
That is certainly not true. I know that you are a very clean individual, and make sure you keep your home nice and tidy. I know that for a fact. Um, There's no Inter Miami game today. First Saturday of the season. There was no Inter Miami game in the midweek. There's no Inter Miami game this upcoming midweek. Weird, right?
Very weird. I feel like we've always spent the weekends talking about Inter Miami. Obviously, sometimes during the week we have to, discuss other things outside of Inter Miami and the MLS. But yeah, I miss watching the game, man. I miss watching doing the pre-match show, discussing how we're gonna defeat the next team, giving wild predictions. No 7-2 this week around, so we're gonna have to wait until the next weekend to actually get back into the meat of things. But gives us an opportunity to just talk about other things around Inter Miami, which is always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's since we started doing this, I've been very focused on Inter Miami and MLS and our upcoming teams and opponents and stuff. And so I haven't paid that much attention to the rest of the world, and especially not international, the international teams doing what they're doing. But over the last couple of days, it started to really feel like an international window. And I am a big USMNT fan. They play this afternoon. And so I am excited to watch them. And I used to get very excited for like days and weeks in advance for them to play. And because we've been doing this and we've been so invested, I feel like it's kind of snuck up on me in a way that I wasn't expecting. So I still think it's going to be a good day of soccer, assuming that the U.S. puts a good performance out against a pretty tough team this afternoon. But no Inter Miami. I know you're not the biggest international fan of international soccer, but for me, it always gets me excited.
I love international soccer, man. That's a misconception. I absolutely love international soccer, but when the tournament actually matters, when they play random teams like San Marino and some godforsaken team in the middle of nowhere, doesn't make sense to me, and I want club action back as soon as possible. But when it's the World Cup, when it's the Euros, when it's the Copa America, I'm very much invested. For viewers and listeners who don't know, my team of choice has and always will be the Netherlands. I've supported them since I was 5 years old, which is weird altogether because I've grown up in India, lived in the US, and support the Netherlands. So it's a bit of a mix all around, but the Netherlands won 4-0 against Canada the other day, which was great. I feel like we're the dark horses for Euros. England lost to Iceland, which is even better. So yeah, I do like international soccer, international football. It just depends when that happens. And when it's over the summer, when there's no club football, I love it, man. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, well, certainly during this international break, there's no club football for our favorite team, Inter Miami. But yeah, not a great start for CONCACAF teams this past week. Mexico lost to Uruguay 4-0. Canada, as you mentioned, lost to the Netherlands 4-0 with a brand new coach. Not a great way to start. The U.S. plays today, and hopefully they don't suffer a similar fate. Speaking of international duty, about 15, well, maybe 20 minutes ago now, we got official word that Luis Suarez will be joining the Uruguay national team for the Copa America. He was officially called up. We heard this was probably going to happen about 2 weeks ago. We've talked about it, even though he wasn't called up to this last camp where they played Mexico a couple days ago. We still felt confident that Luis Suarez was going to be on the Copa America roster. That is official. What's your top line thoughts on that, not having him, the role Campana's going to play, but also maybe just like something he didn't think was probably going to happen a month ago, and now he gets to represent his country possibly for the last time?
Always a great shout when a player gets called up to his international team. Obviously, Luis Suarez is in the swan song of his career, and nobody expected him to be called up. It's a shame that they have a couple of injuries. but it gives him an opportunity to be back in the international fold. Goes to show that he's been performing fairly well and he's had some really good contributions for Inter Miami. That's why the international team, that's why the Uruguay coach is actually considering him for a call up. I don't know how many games he's going to play, but it's always great to be in and around your national squad, right? So for him, it's going to be a great feeling. Hopefully, Uruguay can, have a good run in the tournament, and if not, he's just going to be back sooner, which will be best for Inter Miami. Speaking of Leo Campana, very excited for him because now he's going to be the frontline leading striker for the next however many games, whether it's 5, 7. And it's a great opportunity for him to try and show why we consider him the second best striker in the MLS. He obviously has had a fair few contributions this season already off the bench. Had an absolute screamer, which I will say might be the moment of the season thus far. And he's shown that he's absolute class even when he's coming off the bench. Now it's a really good time for him to get into the rhythm and score a few more goals from the starting lineup.
Yeah, we should write that down. We should do a podcast on the best moments of the season the next time we have a long break like this. Suarez and Uruguay, they've been phenomenal. Uruguay's been phenomenal since they hired Marcelo Bielsa, last year. And they, I think, are one of the dark horses in this tournament. I know Brazil and Argentina are going to be the favorites for Copa America, but I think Uruguay is going to really put on a nice show. And they've been very impressive since Bielsa took over. The one player that I think's really up in the air, whether he's going to make the Copa America roster or not, and is still an impactful player for Inter Miami, is Matias Rojas.
Yep.
He did get called up to the preliminary roster for Paraguay, and he got a start last night against Peru. He started as a 10. That game ended scoreless, so I don't know how he did, but he's been given a chance to make that roster and to be an impactful player for them. And the coaching staff really pushed for him to get that opportunity, and so it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure they have one more game before they have to make their final rosters, but you think we're gonna be able to keep Matias Rojas, or you think he's gonna go to the Copa America?
Selfishly speaking, I hope we get to keep him because I have a feeling that if we do keep him, he's going to have an absolutely fantastic impact on this team in the absence of Messi. I do like him in the number 10 role, and I think he's going to be very, very effective if he plays in the Messi position or in the central midfield. I think we're going to keep him, man. I have a feeling he's going to stay on. I'm not sure how much time he has to show the Paraguay coach what he's capable of. Maybe they pick the team based on form, and then he definitely goes. But I have a good feeling about it, and I'm correct about this, that he gets to stay and be in and around Inter Miami and have a fair few contributions.
Yeah, Paraguay is going to play 3 friendlies. They played one last night. They're going to play Chile on Tuesday, and then Panama next Sunday, and then those will be their preparation games for the Copa America. The fact that he started last night makes me think that they're giving him a real opportunity to prove himself. And so I think it's just a matter of if he takes it. Obviously last night ended scoreless, so I don't really know how he played. And then obviously we're going to lose Messi. I don't know if there's that much to talk about. I don't think they've played a friendly yet, but so those are going to be the 3 big losses we're going to have this summer. I don't know. I feel like we've become so accustomed to the idea of losing Messi for this tournament that it's sort of not even a concern. They do play Ecuador.
I think it has been leading up to this. The next stretch of games is going to be really, really important because we don't want to lose the momentum in the absence of Messi. I don't think we will. I think we're going to be okay, especially with what we saw against Vancouver. I have a good feeling that Tata Martino is going to have enough options at his disposal to be able to grind out the results. It may not be as pretty as it has been. It may not be as easy as it has been. But we've got the squad. We've got the depth to be able to deal with this. So on paper, I'm not too worried. Hopefully Messi comes back from the tournament a champion. And if Matias Rojas goes, if Luis Suarez goes, hopefully they come back without any injuries and without any issues. That's the most we can ask for. I think we're ready. I think we're ready for this next phase of the season.
To be clear, the most I can ask for is that the USMNT wins the Copa America, and Argentina gets eliminated after 3 games so that we get Messi back. I think that
Get
is
rid of Greg
actually
Berhalter and you win.
Okay. Well, that's not the point of this podcast. We have spent the last 10 minutes talking about not Inter Miami teams. And the truth is, that's what we're going to spend the rest of this podcast doing. Our main topic for today is talking about who are the threats to Inter Miami and the potential pitfalls that are going to stop them from doing what they want to do. Inter Miami has 3 trophies still on the line. They're going to have an opportunity to defend their title in the Leagues Cup this summer. The Supporter Shield, they're currently first in the Supporter Shield, although a couple teams have some games in hand. And then, of course, the MLS Cup playoffs. So we kind of just wanted to go around the MLS and take this Saturday. We've never done a Saturday podcast that isn't just, a pregame show, and take this opportunity to check out the rest of the league and sort of mark down the teams that we are a little concerned about, a lot concerned about, and talk about how Inter Miami matches up or how we feel Inter Miami might be able to compete with those teams. I think we should start with the Leagues Cup and Liga MX. Maybe not specifically for that tournament, but just because we're only going to play the Liga MX teams in that tournament. Off the top, we do have 2 Liga MX teams in the group stage that we're going to face. That's Puebla and Tigres. We're going to play them to start the Leagues Cup. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about Tigres, because I feel like Puebla we're going to have less to say about given where they are in the standings. So let's start talking about Tigres for a bit, because I think they're the biggest threats for us getting out of the group.
Yeah, Tigres, they're one of the biggest clubs in Mexico, and they're a team that if we had faced them in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, we would have had very nervous feelings, just like we did against Monterrey. They're a very similar caliber team. Monterrey just finished 4th in the Clausura in Liga MX, and Tigres finished 5th. Very similar goal differential. I mean, very similar teams, 32 points to 31 points. So we've gotten a sense of Monterrey, and now we've got Tigres coming up. Fortunately, it's a 1-game neutral site venue and not a 2-game, 2-legged home and away. Hopefully we are healthy and ready to go for that tournament. Perhaps we've brought in another center back or another, addition to the roster. When we play them, are you going to feel like Inter Miami is the favorite, or are you going to feel like, this is going to be a tough one?
This isn't the feeling that I had against Monterrey. By this point, I'm hoping Inter Miami has sorted out all the issues at the back. We're going to have new incomings. We've obviously heard rumors around the mill that we're looking at center backs, maybe even 2. That's always a good sign that the coaching staff has the right idea. They're strengthening in the right positions. And at this point, the biggest issue for us, there are 2 for me, right? It's what our midfield chemistry is, not the players, but who we pick in the midfield, and defense. Midfield chemistry, I think we're going to sort out over the next few games. This 2-week gap that we've had over the international break, I do think it's going to be really, really valuable for Tata Martino to try and figure out what kind of midfield setup he wants to go with in the next coming games. So by that time, I do expect the coaching staff, the team, to have been able to sort out all the issues in the midfield that we've faced so far. Then it comes to the defense. The defense was slightly lacking, especially after Nico Freire's injury. And the best way to address that is going to be through the summer transfer window. As I mentioned, we're looking at players. Depends on who we bring in, but anybody we bring in, any sort of reinforcements, I'm hoping is going to be an upgrade on Christoph, on Nico Freire. And that just puts us in a really good spot, man. And I'm confident that we're going to make the right decisions and we're going to be able to figure out what our issues are by the time we get to the Leagues Cup. And going into that game, 100% we're the favorites, especially because we're not playing in Mexico.
Yeah, I'm not as confident as you. I know you just gave a reason why the defense might be better, but I actually think that's a reason the defense may be worse, because I don't think we're going to sign a center back that's like an instant superstar center back. I think we're going to get a player that is like Nico Freire, maybe a step above or, in the same tier, but not a guy who's just going to dominate the second he comes in, like we would if we, signed Nacho or Rafael Varane or Sergio Ramos or a guy like that, right? And so I think there's going to be a chemistry building aspect to their arrival. They're not going to have played many games before that game against Tigres, which is, well, I guess the Puebla game's first on July 27th, but I think that's the first game that they'll be eligible for after the window opens. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a chemistry building concern. But let's talk about Tigres because they have some really good players. Their midfielder, Juan Bruneta, is phenomenal. Marcelo Flores, who was a highly touted youngster for the Mexican national program, grew up in the Arsenal Academy for a couple years. He's a really good player. But really, the only time I saw them this year, they kind of fell apart against Columbus, both on the road, but more importantly at home. Do you think that we, as followers of the MLS, would over exaggerate the importance of those CONCACAF Champions Cup games, and that maybe they aren't as relevant to form as we might expect?
That's always the case with the tournament format, right? It's not necessarily how your form is, it's how you deal with the knockout games. It's a one-off game at the end of the day. All you have to do is go into that game. Nothing matters before that, nothing matters after that. Obviously, it matters if you win the game, but your form before that doesn't really matter. So you have to go in with a different sort of a mentality. Now, certain teams have coaches who are very good at going and getting the results in the league and grinding the results out over the course of the season. Certain coaches and teams are really good at winning cups and making sure they get through tournaments. And I don't think form and I don't think play style matters as much as making sure you execute your game plan on that given day. If you can't do that on that given day, then you don't have another opportunity to rectify it, unlike in the league. So for me, it's less important than making sure you have the right plan, the tactics, and the personnel on the pitch to win that one-off game to be able to get the result that you want. And I think Inter Miami has that personnel and should be able to beat Tigres in that one-off.
That game is going to be at Energy Stadium. That's the home of the Houston Texans. So probably not a Messi favorable crowd or an Inter Miami favorable crowd, if I had to guess, just based on, when the Mexican national team has played in that area. So I don't think we're going to have a home field advantage in any sense. We will have the home field advantage in the first game against Puebla. Puebla was not great this Clausura season. They finished last in the Clausura. Really bad defensively. I think they gave up over 2.5 goals a game. Really, really bad. Any concern there? I mean, I think we should maybe put this out there that Liga MX is in their offseason right now, and so they will be retooling and reshaping their rosters. And so the team that just played in the Clausura for Puebla might not be the same team that we see in the League's Cup, but I think that's still relevant that they weren't very good this year.
Yeah, as I think all that I said earlier, I'm probably going to contradict it in my next statement, but Puebla was quite bad. So of the two teams that we're playing in from Mexico, I think Puebla is the game that we should definitely get a result out of. And unless they change drastically in the offseason and unless they improve drastically in the offseason, I don't see a reason for us losing to Puebla unless Inter Miami does an Inter Miami and goes out and loses to the worst team in the league.
Well, that's an MLS thing, and so when you're playing a non-MLS team,
exactly, this shouldn't apply here.
I will say it's a Liga MX team. The worst Liga MX team is a lot better than the worst MLS team, and so let's just keep that in mind. This is probably the equivalent of like a playoff team in the MLS, maybe 6th or 7th in the East. But as we remember, winning one game in the League's Cup is almost guaranteeing you through into the knockout stages. And I agree that winning that Puebla game should be a relatively easy affair. The other player I wanted to mention for Tigres that I didn't is Diego Lainez. He's another player that, has a lot of pedigree as a prospect and is probably continually making steps towards fulfilling that. Anyone else in Liga MX? I mean, we've already talked about them more than I kind of planned to, but there's some really good teams. Pachuca just beat Columbus in the CONCACAF Champions Cup final.
Club America, I think, is right up there for
Club America
contenders to
won.
win the.
Yeah, they won the Clausura. Cruz Azul, who we faced last year in the League's Cup, actually was really bad at that time, and they came in second this year in the Clausura. So, and then Monterrey, another team
Monterrey,
that
yeah.
we're already familiar with. Any of those teams you think are favorites to make it far, and that you would be really, really worried about if we came up against them?
I think Club America for sure. They might be favorites to win the thing. Monterrey as well. I would definitely want to play Monterrey again because I think this time around, if we play with our full strength squad at a time when our team is actually clicking and in full motion, we beat them. And I want that revenge game. So for me, playing Monterrey is going to be really, really fun. And I hope we get to see them again this time.
The other aspect of that tournament is that all the Mexican clubs are staying in the U.S. And so the deeper you get into that tournament, the more exhausted they get, the more homesick they get, the longer they've been away from home. And so if you face any of those teams later into the tournament, it becomes a little bit easier just because they've been traveling for so long. I do know that they're implementing like a home field type situation, but it's still for them away from home. And so I think that plays into the MLS team's hands, and it would play into Inter Miami's hands. Anything else about Liga MX, or should we just move on to the Western Conference?
No, there's a lot of teams to cover in the Western Conference and in the East Conference, so let's talk about them.
Okay, so I'm going to run through some teams in the Western Conference, and you stop me if you think any of these are worth a conversation in terms of being an actual threat to Inter Miami. Sporting Kansas City, San Jose, FC Dallas, St. Louis City.
Stop.
Okay. Let's talk about them.
Hate the fact that we almost lost to St. Louis City. But just want to say, I don't think we're going to see them again at all this season. But boy, that result really got under my skin. All right, you can proceed.
Yeah, I don't think they're as good as they were last year, and I think they got a lot of results that maybe were a few players being spectacular, but not a tremendous team. Austin FC, Vancouver,
maybe
they've been in bad form, but you can see how they're one or two pieces away from being a really good team, especially if they can get that in the midfield and going forward. There's a couple teams I have at least a sentence to say about. The Seattle Sounders have traditionally been very good, and they've signed a youngster out of Argentina, Pedro de la Vega, this offseason that hasn't quite clicked yet. But I think if he gets going in the second half of the season, they're a team that could be dangerous, but they're currently sitting 10th in the West. Portland, with our old friend Phil Neville and Kamal Miller. They did a lot to revamp their defense in the offseason, brought in a new goalkeeper, brought in Kamal Miller, brought in an entire back line, really. And I think that as that defense starts to become a little bit more cohesive, they could build some results. I don't know if it's really in a way that's going to threaten Inter Miami, but I think they could be a little bit better by the end of the season than they've looked so far. The Colorado Rapids, another team that did a huge revamp this offseason. And so, maybe they can add a piece in the summer, maybe a little bit more cohesion, and they can get going. They certainly have solid players. The Houston Dynamo, a team that really showed out well in the second half of last season, made the U.S. Open Cup run, did well to rise up the rankings and put themselves in a good position in the playoffs. They were really hot, not off to the greatest start. They're in 7th in the West, but a team I think has some dangerous pieces. And if they can catch some form, and assuming they don't lose any of those big pieces like Coco Carrasquilla in the summer, I think they could be a dangerous team by the end of the season. And then Minnesota, I haven't watched a single game they've played. I don't know how they're doing so good. I know they got a new coach earlier this season, but I don't know. Have you seen them play? Do you have any thoughts on Minnesota?
I haven't seen them play at all, but they've definitely surprised me. They've got some results against some decent teams. They beat Kansas. They beat Atlanta, teams that we sort of, had issues against. Atlanta for sure. They got a draw against LA Galaxy. And yeah, they just seem to be right up there in the mix, which is really surprising because this was a team that I did not expect to be sitting almost near the top of the Western Conference. So they definitely have something going for them. I'll have to do a lot more research into them to be able to talk more intelligibly about their play style and stuff. But I will say a team to watch out for sure.
Yeah, if they win their games in hand, they would be top of the West right now. So
Yeah.
certainly no slouches. Okay, so that's every team in the West other than the three we sort of circled before the show that we really wanted to spend some time on. Let's start with the lowest in the table. That's fourth place, LA Galaxy. They are on 28 points through 17 games. They have very dynamic attacking players. Ricky Puig, incredible. Having an MVP-like season. We saw Joseph Paintsil and what he could be when we got to play them at their place. We got, I think, a little lucky to get a draw out of that. Messi with a late equalizer after we had been really outplayed, I think, for 80 to 85 minutes in that game. What are your thoughts on the Galaxy in terms of how they compared Inter Miami, how a matchup would look, and if you would be really scared?
Dangerous team, man.
Hold on. Let me just say, the only way we would play them is in a MLS Cup final or a Leagues Cup, semifinal final. So if we play them again, it's going to be for big prizes.
If we play them again, and I fully expect us to, at least in the Leagues Cup or in the final of the MLS Cup, hopefully, they're a dangerous team. We saw glimpses of that when we played them. And I starkly remember in the pre-game show that we did for LA Galaxy, both you and I had the same reaction that this team, once it gets its pieces in place, can be quite dangerous. And on paper, it was looking quite spicy. They've got two really, really heavy-hitting wingers on the side.
Let me stop you because I have failed to mention a very important aspect of this conversation about the Galaxy. They're going to be signing Marco Reus, a central midfielder from Borussia Dortmund. He's on the older side. He's not and has never been the quality of a Lionel Messi, but he is going to be a veteran in that midfield that is going to come in with a lot of experience and not feel any pressure under any circumstances. They've also been linked to Robert Lewandowski, a striker who is let me put it this way. If the Galaxy add a striker that is very impressive, of a very high quality, with those wingers, with that number 10, with Marco Reus sitting in the midfield to help out, with Delgado being their destroyer 6, that front 6, front 7 will look very scary. Okay, you may continue.
I was going to get to the fact that they're going to sign Marco Reus. I was not going to mention Lewandowski because I just heard this news via you. But we all know Marco Reus and Robert Lewandowski are best of friends, played together at Borussia Dortmund. That is a title-winning side, my friend. If they do manage to pull that off, that is a scary, scary side. But coming back to the point that I was making, and just regardless of Marco Reus coming in, regardless of them signing a striker, with the current setup that they have, they're still very, very dangerous. We got Paintsil, Gabriel Peck. I'm a big, big fan of Paintsil. I think he's fantastic on the wing side. And yeah, he can destroy any team with his pace and his ability down the wing. We saw a bit of that against us. Gave us so much trouble on that wing side. So unless we sign somebody in our defense to be able to stop some of the pace that LA Galaxy have, we're still going to have issues. Ricky Puig, I really like him as a player, but he needs a hairstylist, man. He needs a hairstylist. Overall, LA Galaxy, very spicy, very dynamic team. I enjoy watching them, and they're going to be a trouble.
Let's talk about how they match up, because I'm actually not convinced that Marco Reus and I understand Lewandowski is just a rumor. Maybe they just made the call and that's all that it was. But you can definitely see them trying to get a DP striker in this summer. They have Paintsil on DP status. They have Ricky Puig. But I think the majority of their other really good players are going for TAM deals or going for U22 deals. So they have the space to add a third DP, I believe. And I think they want to use it on a striker because Joveljic is fine. But, I mean, Campana would start over Joveljic. So,
honestly, Joveljic, we criticized him in our analysis when we did it. Since then, he scored 9 goals. He's scored hat tricks and stuff.
That's because of the team he's on. But
he's doing well. I will say he's not the most mind-blowing striker out there, but he's scoring goals, man, which he didn't do last season. So at least he's doing that.
True. I do want to frame these conversations, though, in terms of how a matchup between Inter Miami and this team would go. I thought that they played the last game absolutely as you should if you want to beat Inter Miami. Play very deep, play very tight, and even when you get forward, make sure you do it in a disciplined way so that you can come back, regain your shape defensively, and make it very difficult for Messi and company to break you down. And then they have the players to smack you on the counterattack with, Paintsel and Peck and Ricky Puig and the guys we mentioned. To me, this feels like a disaster matchup for Inter Miami. And even though I like the talent Inter Miami has over the LA Galaxy, stylistically, I don't love the fit between these two teams. Are you with me, or you think that we match up a little bit better?
Totally with you, because they've got players across the field in most of their positions that can play a style of football that is basically Inter Miami's kryptonite. They've got a destroyer 6 in Delgado, who is good in the midfield. Maya Yoshida is no joke in that back line. And then they've got really, really pacey wingers who can really hurt us in counterattacks and transitions, which Inter Miami isn't great at. So when you go with that matchup, this is a team that would really, really hurt us if we don't play our perfect football.
Okay, let's move on, because I think we both are a little fearful of the Galaxy, and I think we both said at the time that we got them at the right time. Let's go to LAFC. They are currently second in the West in a kind of quiet manner for them. They've been very good over the last couple of seasons. They have some very good players, currently sitting on 30 points from 16 games. They would be tied with Real Salt Lake for top of the table if they win the game in hand. They are very good. They are a very good team. They're very well coached. They have very good players. How do you feel about LAFC?
I remember this was a team that I mentioned in one of our podcasts that I do think is going to be difficult to beat. And you mentioned that they're not doing well at all. And here we are after a few games. I believe they're on a 5-match winning streak. They won the conference final last season. Seven-game winning streak,
although
which includes includes US Open. So they've somehow found the form that I expected them to find, and I'm not too surprised. This is a team that has always been in the conversation for reaching the finals, for being in that MLS Cup conversation throughout. They got Hugo Lloris in goal, who's definitely helped them keep a few points by saving a few penalties here and there. They have Olivier Giroud incoming, which is going to be a big, big plus to their front line. And they're no joke. They've got people who can contribute across the field. They're very well drilled, and they're one of those teams that started slow, but it feels like they built up really good game chemistry. And they may not at this point in time have too many, big names in their squad. Obviously, Giroud comes in, changes that, but it seems to be a very well-balanced team across the pitch.
Yeah, this is a team that not just Giroud, but I think they have the potential to add another big signing. And they have the cachet and lifestyle in LA to bring in the sort of biggest stars, similar to how Inter Miami can. Timothy Tillman and Eduardo Atuesta are two midfielders they have that I thought have been really good this season. Atuesta they brought back after a couple of years at Palmeiras in Brazil. He's been solid for them, and I think he's just going to keep getting better as the season goes on. And then Timothy Tillman, who's sort of an athletic box-to-box, has been really good for them. And then, of course, Denny Bouanga is their star player, the left winger that is...
top scorer, 10 goals already.
Yeah, he's ultra pacey. He's a guy that can absolutely crush you on the counterattack. And then if you pair him with Giroud in terms of being able to combine, it gets very scary, especially for a back line that's susceptible to transition opportunities. They have the athletic midfielders to get forward. They have the really pacey forward line to hit you, in dangerous ways. I think maybe that's going to be what I'm most nervous about when we play any team in those knockout type games, because that's Inter Miami's weakness. And we saw it against Atlanta, a week and a half ago. Where would you rank them in terms of the teams we've talked about so far? Maybe just LA. Who are you more worried about?
I'm not sure if their defense is as potent as LA Galaxy's defense. Yes, their midfield is really good in terms of the athleticism in there, and the transitions that they can have with Atuesta and Tillman especially. So I think their midfield might be slightly better than LA Galaxy's currently without Marco Reus in it. But in terms of their front line, I think Dennis Bouanga has to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So if you can contain him, I'm not too concerned about the LAFC's front threat. But when you add Giroud to it, that's when the issues start. So I would say I'm not as concerned about them as against LAFC, maybe because we haven't played them yet and haven't seen how we match up against them. With Galaxy, we sort of know that they have the style and capability to play the form that will cause us issues. But on paper, I think Inter Miami's front line is going to be able to exploit this back line a little better. So I will say it ranks slightly lower than LA Galaxy.
I will say for LAFC, they have the second best or tied for second best defense in the Western Conference. So they're not bad defensively. And I don't want anyone to have that, opinion.
Idea.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you because I think that they are going to try and be a little bit more aggressive. And I think that their winning pedigree is going to make them a little bit more confident than the Galaxy, who are going to be, comfortable sitting back and trying to hit on the counter. But I will say Inter Miami has this tendency, and especially over the last week, to let the midfield disappear. And I think the Galaxy I think LAFC could tear us apart if we let that happen in a matchup with them. Let's move on to Real Salt Lake because they're actually the best team in the West, according to the table, according to the analytics, according to the goal differential. They've won they've sort of been right there with Inter Miami in terms of the Supporter Shield. If they win their one game in hand, they would go above Inter Miami in the Supporter Shield race. But we already saw them. We already played them at home, and we already beat them relatively convincingly. Are we letting that opening game cloud our judgment about this Real Salt Lake team?
Maybe a little bit, but again, it's okay. Let me put it this way in perspective. Inter Miami can go out and beat any team in the MLS across the board if we have all our players and if the other team plays their comfortable play style. If teams start playing the play style that is counter to what Inter Miami tries to do, which is sit back, absorb pressure, and then hit on the counter, which is not what all of these top teams in the West do. All of these top teams in the West like to have possession, like to play fast, spacey football, and that leaves behind a lot of space for Inter Miami's players to be able to exploit that. If they go toe-to-toe against Inter Miami, we will come out victorious just by the sheer quality that we have. But if Real Salt Lake does what LA Galaxy did, then that's an issue. So
there's actually a stat that I came across after the last game that I think backs up what you're saying. Would you say that teams, when they're at home, are a little bit more comfortable trying to play their style? And when they go on the road, they're
of course,
try and
yeah, that's
bunker a little bit
natural.
more? Inter Miami has the same winning percentage at home and away this season in all competitions. And I think that's sort of goes to the idea that teams on the, when we're playing at their place, they're going to be a little more comfortable playing their style. And Inter Miami oftentimes can cut through teams when they're not bunkering low. And yeah, when they come to Miami, they played a little bit deeper and a little bit more solid, and Inter Miami struggled a little bit more. The thing about Real Salt Lake is they've had an exceptional start from Chicho Arango. They've scored 36 goals, and he's got 16 of them. He's on pace to have one of the great MLS seasons in terms of scoring. But Inter Miami's done a really good job of dealing with opposing strikers when they are the focal point of the offense. And I know we've mentioned this, but João Klaus, Benteke, Chicho Arango, we've done it virtually all season. And that's sort of the one credit I think our defense really does deserve, because they've been very good in those situations. They have two wingers, Diego Luna and Andres Gomez, thank you, who are like 21 and 22 or 20 and 21, something like that are developing, that have had probably the best seasons of their careers so far this year. And if they continue to get better, I think they're going to be a good team in the West. But I don't think they're going to get to a point where they're going to be a real threat to Inter Miami in a way that they're going to play a style that doesn't play through Chicho Arango. I think if they come and face Inter Miami, they're going to try and get 2 goals out of Chicho and win the game 2-1. And I don't know if Inter Miami is vulnerable to that. And then the other thing is, I know Gomez is very quick and can play on the counter pretty well. I think Anderson Julio is one of their backup strikers. He's relatively good on the counter, but Diego Luna is not that guy. Matt Crooks, a midfielder that we didn't see, but that was one of their big signings. I don't think he's really that guy. So I don't think they play the style that concerns me if I'm Inter Miami, because I think that we can play through and around them in a way that I don't know if they can handle.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think for me, I may come and bite my tongue on this, but it's more threatening. So Chicho Arango is having a season of a lifetime. He's a brilliant player, but I'm not as concerned about him as I am concerned about Diego Luna, Andre Gomez, and some of the pacey players that Real Salt Lake have, because that's the kind of players that we sort of struggle against. And as you've already mentioned, we contain the number 9 really well because we know the kind of threat that they pose. I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly. Please point that out if I am. But in that first game against Real Salt Lake, it was the first game of the season. We didn't start off particularly well. And
no, we did. We had an amazing first half.
Okay,
and
there
we
you
were
go.
a little quiet in the second half.
Definitely misremembering that game.
No, maybe it was the opposite.
For some reason.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
The way I'm thinking about that game is that we gave away the ball a lot in the midfield, and yet we scored 1 goal in the first half, 1 goal in the second half, and we just won that game. So, again, I may be completely misremembering this, and I need to go back and watch. Okay, we were very good versus Real Salt Lake in the first half, and then second half we absolutely tossed it up. Thank you, Kareem. We've missed you in the chat. But yeah, it just felt like that game was quite easy, and we walked through it, which was uncharacteristic of Real Salt Lake, and I thought they'd pose a bit of more threat. But I completely agree with you. This is not a team that I am as concerned in terms of playing the play style that would harm Inter Miami in any way.
I saw in the chat that Andres Gomez is the pride of Millonarios. And in my heart, Emerson Rodriguez will always be the pride of Millonarios. But I just, as you were saying that, I looked up how he was doing this year, and it wasn't phenomenal. So I don't know if we're going to be seeing him again. Kareem, great to see you in the chat. Anything else about the entire Western Conference before we move eastward? Because I think that there's a lot more teams that we're much more likely to see and have seen and have more thoughts on.
I feel like we might be able to get past the East and face issues once we get to the MLS Cup, because, okay, again, this might be me saying it because we've played a lot more of the Eastern teams and it seems like we're a lot better matched up against them. But a lot of the threat comes from the West, and I think that MLS Cup final, if and when we get to that, is going to be really, really hard. And it all depends on matchups.
Okay, let's go. And I'm going to start at the bottom of the table. Let's just give 30 seconds of attention to each team unless we feel like they deserve more of a conversation. But starting at the bottom, the New England Revolution.
Not really. We beat them 4-1. Right? Yeah, we beat them 4-1, and it seemed quite simple and easy.
We are going to play them in the final game of the season at home, and I think they may be picking up some spoons on the way back because they feel like they're destined for the wooden spoon this season. Okay, who's next? Chicago Fire. We haven't played them yet. They are awful. Their biggest player... Their biggest player is Xherdan Shaqiri. They spent a lot of money on him. They gave him a huge contract, and he's been awful. I think they're trying to get out of that contract. I don't know. We'll know more by the time we play them. We do have them coming up soon, but I don't know. I'm not very worried about them.
Yeah, me neither. I think we should be okay. But again, let me preface this, guys. Inter Miami has been woefully bad at playing against the bad teams for some reason, and we've always made it much harder for ourselves than it should be. Atlanta, who's next and who we're going to mention next, we lost against them 3-1 quite badly, so at home as well. So just to say that Chicago Fire is really bad and they're not going to cause us issues, or New England's going to, not be that great. We should preface this by saying that Inter Miami has a tendency to make these bad teams look really good. So
yeah, but that's not gonna happen in the playoffs. That I'm confident of. I haven't thought about Emerson Rodriguez in so long, and so I want to go to this comment from Francisco that he hasn't been great for Millonarios, and he's going to come back in January. I actually think there might be a clause where he comes back in the summer. I'm not sure, but then he goes, he began well, but he finished poorly, and if that doesn't describe Emerson Rodriguez, I don't know what does. Starting well and then having poor finishing. I just love the way that was phrased. Okay, who's next? Atlanta United. They blew us out at home, and then 4 days later they sold their star striker, and 3 days before, a day before that, they fired their coach.
Sacked their coach. How did we lose 3-1 against them, man? How?
It's the most MLS score of the season. I'm surprised that we didn't see that coming, because it was the most MLS thing that could have happened. I think Thiago Almada is going to be gone in the summer. I think they're going full rebuild mode so that they will miss the playoffs this year and try and be back and competitive next season. I'm not worried about them.
Yeah, I don't think we should. If we lose against them for the second time in the playoffs, I think...
Yeah. I don't think they're going to make playoffs, but we do play them again September 18th at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and I think the biggest threat that they pose is that their stadium is going to cause an injury because they play on turf. But I'll always have that Campana sweet goal over Miles Robinson to remember that stadium by. Let's move on. Montreal, we've played them twice. They got the better of us at home, sort of when we were in a midweek sessions with the CONCACAF Champions Cup and playing Nashville, and we were rotating and resting, and Jordi Alba couldn't save us. But we go on the road, even though we go down 2-0, we come back, we get our revenge, we split the season series. I don't think we're going to see them again.
They're a good team. I will say,
yeah, I don't think they have a ton of individual talent in terms of their players, but I think they're well coached. I think their coach is really good. I like their system. I think it works in the MLS. Give them another year or two, maybe 2 or 3 more transfer windows, and I think they will be a lot better. I also think they have some young players that are going to be better in 2 years than they are now. Orlando City, we blew them out at home. They were one of the favorites to win the Supporter Shield. They were one of the favorites to be one of the best teams in MLS this season, and they have been bad. I wouldn't be surprised if they fired their coach at some point this season. They're sitting on 17 points from 16 games.
They've got the talent. I don't know why they're so far down, because they've definitely got the talent. They've got a good midfield. Ojeda, Lodero, dangerous players, man. And yeah, I would have expected them to be higher up and maybe pose a bigger danger. I'm just gutted we got a 0-0 against them, away from home. But yeah, it is what it is. I don't know if we see them again. They should make the playoffs, but I don't know. It might be close for them, given how they're still in 11th. So,
if I'm remembering correctly, the Leagues Cup knockout rounds are based on geography. So I think that there's at least a chance we see them in the Leagues Cup, but I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they have a chance to get their coach fired. Actually, I will say, though, now that we're getting into 11th, this is a team that could make the playoffs, and it could be a team we play in the first round.
Yep.
So we could see them again. I don't think they pose a particularly big threat to Inter Miami just based on their play style. Before I move on, I just want to go to this question in the chat from Kareem. Ian Frey against the Philadelphia Union. You think that's going to happen?
I think it's getting closer and closer. And I will say this is the closest that we've come to seeing Ian Frey on the pitch. He's obviously played for Inter Miami too. I hope so, man. I really hope so, because I think just like everybody else, are waiting with bated breath to see Ian Frey perform well for us. I don't think he's going to start, but he could definitely come off the bench. It's time.
I don't think we're going to see him next weekend. The B team played yesterday, and he wasn't in the lineup. I think they're going to give him a game every 2 weeks with the B team until he can prove he's 90 minutes fit. So I think we're probably still.
Do you think they're preparing him to play the full 90 minutes rather than Give him maybe 20 minutes off the bench, 15 minutes off the bench.
I don't think you can do that with a center back position to like plan for that, right? Because if the game's close, you're not going to take out a center back that's in the rhythm of the game just to put Ian Frey on. I think they need to prepare him to play 90 minutes. And by the way, I think he's more talented than Sergei Kristoff for sure. And so I think they want him to be a starter for them if and when he's capable, or maybe they bring in another player. DC United, we've played them twice. We've beaten them twice. One of them took a miraculous sort of last-minute shot from Leo Campana, but a win's a win. Actually, Campana had a goal in both legs against them. This feels like a team that is not something Inter Miami should be worried about. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, and I'm bored of playing them. Honestly, I don't want to see them again. If we can avoid seeing them, please, because it's going to be the same conversation about Benteke doing something. And I have a feeling third time they might get lucky against us, so I don't want to jinx it.
It's a similar theme to what we've been talking about, though, where the big strikers, I think Inter Miami's done a good job of containing. It's the wingers and the transition players that are most scary, and I don't think that's what DC United is set up to do. Nashville, a team that is set up to do that. We've already played them 3 times, twice at home, once on the road. We're getting ready to play them again on the road on June 29th, the end of this month. They really gave us a real run for our money in the home game. They scored 3 goals, all in transition. Luckily, we got one of them was offsides by an inch. That allowed us to escape with a 2-2 draw. But then we kind of beat them up at home. They've now fired their coach. They feel like a club that's sort of going to spend the next year and a half transitioning to the next phase of whatever Nashville wants to be. You worried about them or not really?
I haven't followed them since they fired their coach, so I'm not sure what the changes are being instituted there. They are a dangerous team. They've got some players who can hurt us on the transition. But I wouldn't say they're nearly to the level of someone like an LAFC, LA Galaxy, or Cincinnati. So for me, they might pose us issues in the first round if we see them. The next game against them away from home is going to be interesting as a sample size, but something that we should be able to overcome fairly easily, because the game that we played against them in the first time around, where they came out firing through the blocks, was scary. I don't think they're going to be doing that again.
Yeah, they are a team that plays the style that, or at least has played the style with Gary Smith, that's nervy. But I think them losing Fafa Picault in the offseason made them a lot less dangerous to Inter Miami. Picault and Schaffelberg, I thought, were like a tremendous 1-2 punch in terms of beating us in transition. I thought maybe as a team they got better, which doesn't feel like it. But in terms of playing Inter Miami, they got worse this season after doing a really good job in 2 games last year. Nashville are definitely an annoying team, although they are less annoying without Fafa Picault. Moving into 8th spot and our next opponent, the Philadelphia Union, we play them next Saturday at Subaru Park. They are down. They've been very good over the last couple of years, and they have sort of come back down to earth with a lot of the same players. Our old friend Julian Carranza looks like he's going to be moving this offseason. He's their top striker. But they are a very flexible team, have a lot of pieces that can rotate in. The depth, I think, is really good because they do a good job with their academy. This season, they don't feel that daunting. And in fact, I don't think they are really that scary of a team for Inter Miami.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, next game is going to be interesting to see how we match up with them, especially without Lionel Messi and some of our, bigger players. But I think we should be able to take care of them.
Yeah,
I'm sick and tired of playing Nashville as well, man.
I'm going to skip number 7 and go to number 6. That is the Toronto FC. We haven't seen them yet. They have very dangerous players, very, very good players. Insigne, Bernadeschi, and they are seemingly on the same page for the first time since those guys arrived. I think that their coach, John Herdman's really good. I was really impressed with what he did with the Canadian national team. I thought moving to Toronto FC made them a better team. I don't know how good they are holistically in terms of their talent, but they have some really big star level players. And if they go off, Inter Miami could be in trouble. But we still have 2 games against them to see what they're all about this year.
Yeah, I guess the only issue is going to be playing away from home if we have to, which I don't believe we will, because if we finish top, then we have home advantage throughout. I don't know if we, how it's going to match up. We're obviously going to play them. We've got 2 games against them, so it's going to be interesting to see where they land. But yeah, I agree with you. A team that could definitely pose some issues, and they've got some big names in there. On paper, Inter Miami matches up well enough for them, but if they pull out the right tactics against us, what I'll be watching for against when we play them is what kind of tactics they play, basically. Whether they sit back and whether they hit us on the counter, whether they play free flowing football, because that could really determine how we match up against them.
We play Toronto FC in Toronto at BMO Field on October 5th, second to last game of the season. And if Inter Miami wins that game, they will have beaten all 3 Canadian teams in Canada this season. I don't know how often that's happened, but I'm sure it's not that often just because of one's in the West and 2 are in the East. So I think that would be pretty cool to knock into the accomplishments chart. The last team I wanted to talk about sort of quickly is Charlotte, another team we haven't seen yet. And maybe we're underestimating them because of what they've been in the past and the fact that we haven't seen them this year, but it doesn't feel like they have a ton of individual talent. I will say they're linked to a move with Tim Ream, Fulham defender, U.S. men's national team defender. It sounds like he might be, coming to Charlotte this summer, and I think he might be the best defender in the league the minute he steps forward, assuming Inter Miami doesn't do anything crazy. Any thoughts on Charlotte?
Not much, man. It's going to depend on how we play against them. Yeah, it just seems like one of those teams that's a little bit of a wild card right now.
I will say I think they've gotten a little lucky with their results. They've scored 18 goals in 17 games, and they've given up 18 goals. And so the fact that they're 5th in the East with that sort of goal differential is...
I will say I expect them to finish lower than they actually are right now, because there are a couple of teams below them that are gunning to come up.
I absolutely agree with you. Going to the chat before we get in, because the last 4 teams that we haven't talked about yet, I think we should spend a little bit longer on them. But before we do, question from the chat. If you take out Inter Miami, do you think there's more quality in the East or the West this year?
I think there's more quality in the West. It just seems like that, and that may be the bias of having played in the East, knowing that we're able to beat a lot of these teams, versus the unknowing factor of some of the teams that we haven't really come across yet, like in LAFC. So for me, I think the West has a bit more quality compared to the East and might be more dangerous.
That's an interesting question. I like it. I feel the opposite way. I think the East is better even without Inter Miami. I think without Inter Miami, it's very close. I still would give it to the East because I do think Cincinnati is better than any team in the West, and I do think Columbus is probably better than any team in the West. And then adding Inter Miami on top of that, I think the East is much better than the West this season. Okay, let's get into what I'm going to rank the most likely teams to trip us up in the East of these last 4 that we haven't talked about. And I'm going to start with New York City FC. They're currently 3rd in the East, 29 points from 16 games. I thought they had a chance to be the worst team in the league. I thought them in New England were going to be competing for the wooden spoon, and yet they've been on a tear. 29 points. I mean, they're a good team, apparently. Talk to me about NYCFC. You like them more than I do. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, like when we played against them, what was the scoreline?
1-1.
3-1?
1-1.
1-1.
We drew them 1-1. It was the game that Luis Suarez had like 5 shots, but Matt Freese saved them all. Yeah.
That was the game. Sorry, for some reason I had Montreal and New York City confused because of their colors, but I will say they played well against us and they absolutely frustrated Suarez, and we just couldn't finish our chances even though we were the better team against them. That being said, they are on a 5-match winning streak, which is, very surprising. They're doing really well. They've got victory after victory. They've got a decent midfield with that Sands and Parks combination, which you thought was absolutely, a non-starter. But I think they've got a good, solid combination there, and they play together really well, which sort of builds up their foundation. They've got Ojeda and Yanis Wolf, I think, is a great, great player. And then Santi Rodriguez, their number 10, who's been really good this season. So they're a really good team who is definitely overperforming. And I will say that it seems like the elephant sitting on a tree sort of a metaphor, because they've won their games fairly closely. They've won their games by 1 goal, drawn one here, 2-1, 3-2. So it has been fairly close. That being said, I haven't seen enough from them to suggest that they can pose too much of a problem to Inter Miami whenever we come up against them. I think with the way they line up and with their playing style, they don't have the ability to play that counter-attacking football that Inter Miami struggles against so much. Watch me eat my words when we play them next, but I think we should be okay against them in terms of matchup.
I think they're going to struggle to score goals. I really do. And I'm amazed that they've scored as many as they have. This was the talking point when we played them last time, kind of expecting Santi Rodriguez to be their main playmaker and goal scorer. He does lead their team with 6 goals, but it's not a ton. Alonso Martinez has 6 goals also. And he scored his 4th goal of the season against us. He was the one that scored against us. He had a hat trick last weekend. So really he was on 3 goals up until this past weekend. If he can become a consistent goal scorer for them, I like them a lot better, but I'm not convinced by him yet. Talis Magno, a guy that obviously has a ton of potential and, tools and talent, but he has never really been able to turn that into consistent production for NYCFC. So I think if some things go right for them, they could be better. I look at them and I don't even know if they're a playoff team. They've won 7 of their last 8 games. I know I'm so pessimistic on them. And maybe that's why they're going to be the team to beat Inter Miami. I will say they could definitely beat Inter Miami when we play them again at the Mickey Mouse Stadium. But I don't fear that team at all. I would feel so confident going up against them. And maybe that's my own downfall. But yeah.
If Inter Miami doesn't have home field advantage in the playoffs and we match up against them, I don't imagine us winning at that Mickey Mouse Stadium, man. It's awful. It's awful.
We play them on September 21st in the Mickey Mouse Stadium. So our 5th to last game of the season, we'll get a chance to check it out. But yeah, can we move on? Because I don't want to talk about them anymore. I hate them. Yeah. I mean, as a team, I hate them. I don't get who they are, what they're trying to do. I don't think they have that much talent. And so the fact that they're 3rd in the East upsets me.
As a adopted New York resident, I can say that New York Red Bulls are far better than New York City FC.
Okay, well, let's talk about the Red Bulls because they, I think, are the next team in line in terms of most dangerous to Inter Miami in the East. We've played them twice already, so we might not face them again until the playoffs. We got railroaded on the road, but that was without Lionel Messi, without a couple guys.
And it was raining. We don't like the rain.
Pouring rain. Clearly, Luis Suarez was having a bad time, as we found out against what was the game that it was really pouring for like 20 minutes, like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago? Was that DC United? I think it was the DC United game.
So yeah.
Jordi Alba hates the rain, and that clearly applied to that first game against the Red Bulls. We had a lot of turnovers, and then we played them at home, and it was scarily similar in the first half. And I was getting ready to talk to you after the game about how this team might be our kryptonite and how we might really struggle against this team if we play them, and we should pray that we don't play them again. And then we went out and scored 6 goals in the second half. And
was all the goals in the second half?
Yes, we were losing 1-0 at halftime. So
that is insane.
How do we feel about the Red Bulls now?
It would have been 6-1 if Chelo Wigan didn't have an absolute brain fart at the end.
It would have been 6-1, yes.
Listen, this team is good. It's got some good players. Van Zier, Morgan combine up really well. And it's, again, one of those things. They haven't got one striker, but they've got 2, which sort of affects Inter Miami's defense a little bit. And they are dangerous. Let's not say that they're not dangerous. That 6-2 scoreline was warranted. We definitely deserved to win that game in that second half, but it was a little bit inflated. like the first loss that we had against them, which was 4-0. I thought, we wouldn't have lost that badly if it was for the conditions. This is a team that can match up to us fairly well, man. I think they're one-to-one man if you take it by, player to player. They've got some good players in there, and I fully expect us to have a difficult game against them in the playoffs if and when we do meet them.
Yeah, I think also they play the style that's really dangerous for us, where they can force midfield turnovers and hit us in transition quickly. And so I think that there's definitely a path that they can beat us if we don't come locked in and dialed in and focused, and if we're a little turnover prone. And that, by the way, goes not just to Tota Aviles and Drake Callender and Chelo Wigan, but also to Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets and Lionel Messi. So if we play them, we're going to have to be on the top of our game, I think.
We've also just wanted to mention, we've never played them when they're big centre-backs in there. Noah Eli, I'm not sure how you pronounce that name, but he's a Norwegian centre-back. We've never played him before. So if he's there against us, might be a different story. But they've got 3 players that I'm really concerned about and could potentially hurt us.
And they like you mentioned with Ellie, and I think he's had a little bit of an up and down season. I don't know if he's been a superstar for them, but when you put him with
Nealis, Sean Nealis,
Dylan Nealis, Sean Nealis, thank you. Those are 2 big boys that are not going to be fun to go body to body with.
Yeah.
So definitely a team to be concerned about if we play them in an important game. Okay, there's 2 teams left that we haven't talked about, both from the mediocre state of Ohio. Which one do you think are you less concerned about? The Columbus Crew or FC Cincinnati? Let me ask you, hold on, let me stop you. Are these the two teams you're most worried about in the East, like I am?
Yeah.
Like, is it even really close?
No, not really. I would say Cincinnati and Columbus Crew are definitely 2 teams that will. It's either going to be Miami, Columbus, or Cincinnati who are going to go on and win the conference. So, yeah, 100% concerned about these 2.
I think that's true. Which one are you less concerned about?
Columbus Crew.
Okay, let's talk about it. The Columbus Crew have been a little bit lower down the table. They're 7th. They've only played 14 games so far, 24 points, which is solid and respectable. But, of course, they've been playing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup virtually every midweek. They're a team that is really good at tournaments, really good at knockout games. They play a very good style of football. They have a very good coach. They have some very good midfielders. They have a really good goal scorer. They have dynamic players on the wings. Oh, and their defense is pretty solid too. Like I mentioned, they made it to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. They did lose to Pachuca. I guess they had an illness going through the team, and they were on the road, and so they kind of limped through that final. But the fact that they made it, they went on the road to Mexico twice to get results. I think speaks to their quality. And of course, now that they don't have that tournament hanging over their heads, I think they're going to focus a lot more on the league and will rise up the ranks relatively quickly. What's your first thought about Columbus?
There's a reason I put them below Cincinnati, because they play a very similar style of football as Inter Miami. They love possession. They love to keep the ball, draw the pressure towards them, and then they break the opposition by passing around them, and they recycle the ball a lot. Very possession-heavy team, but as you mentioned, they have players across the pitch. You can name a player in every single position that is, probably among the best in the MLS. Cucho Hernandez, I believe, is injured for them, so they've been playing Russell Rowe up top at striker.
He played for them on last week against Pachuca, so he's back.
He's definitely a player to be concerned about. Russell Rowe as well. They got Rossi in the wings, Nagbe in the midfield, and then Camacho in the defense. This seems like a team that doesn't have any superstars, but has a solid 8 rated player across the pitch. And they combine really well. It's a well-drilled team. Wilfred Nancy knows exactly what to get out of this team. They play a simple 4-2-3-1, heavy possession style football, and they're well-drilled.
No. They play a 3-4-2-1. It is unique, and I think it's been very effective for them.
Did I say 4-2-3-1?
Yes.
Sorry, I meant 3-4-2-1. Same numbers across the page.
Yes, 3-4-2-1. Here's to me what makes them so special is that six combination between Darlington Nagby, who, by the way, I love as a player.
Is it great? Probably the best DM in the league, right?
Probably, I think so, and I've been a big fan of his for a long time. And then putting him with Aiden Morris is it gives them a six partnership that's very solid defensively, protects that back line, but is also very good in possession. And to me, for Inter Miami, it's not just about playing in transition, but it's about playing through our press when we, even if we aren't turning the ball over, that's an effective way for an opposing team to beat us. And we saw this against Atlanta a lot. Dax McCarty and Jean De Silva, they did a really good job in that midfield. Not Silva, Mayumba did a really good job in that midfield a week and a half ago of playing through our press and then building numbers to hit us quickly in transition. And I watched that game thinking Columbus is going to do this to us all game if we're not
100%.
careful.
Yep.
We have to play tight lines against them. Like, this is the first team. Let me put it this way. This is the first team that we've talked about so far where I think we have to play a style that beats them instead of us just worrying about them facing a style that beats us. We have to play with tight lines. We have to play disciplined. We can't turn the ball over. Even if we turn the ball over up the field, which is normally okay because you have time to reset, I still think they're going to be dangerous. I am very worried about this Columbus Crew team. I think they're very good, and I think they could be Inter Miami's. I think this could be the team that really takes Inter Miami for everything they're worth if we're not careful.
Yeah, as I said, they play through the park if you're not careful. They will play you off the field. They're very good in possession, love to keep the ball. And if you press them incorrectly, and if you press them wrong, they will run circles around you, they will pass circles around you, and they will get past you very quickly. This Inter Miami team has shown that we leave a lot of spaces in behind, especially with our current midfield structure, and our defense is just not capable of holding the line and playing in a low block. So I completely agree with you. Very astute point about us playing a different style of football to them rather than them adapting to us.
Yeah, and Yaya Boa, Cucho Hernandez, Jason Russell-Rowe, Diego Rossi, all guys that are good in transition as well. So they have plenty of weapons, lots of athleticism to beat us in the ways that we've been talking about this entire episode. We're going to play them in the next couple of weeks. If I can pull up the schedule, we don't play them next weekend, but we play them the following Wednesday, and it's at home. I actually think that we have a better chance of winning that game than we do the following game with Messi and co. Let me stop and say they won the MLS Cup last year. They made to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final this year. We beat them, or we got 4 points out of them last season. We did relatively well against them, and that was with the Phil Neville team. This year, I think we might do better against them in a week and a half when we play without Messi and Suarez. I think you have to start Yannick Bright in that game. I think you have to go with the same game plan you went against Vancouver with. And I think if you do that, you actually have a chance to be very successful against them. But that's not really the point of this episode. We will play them again, third to last game of the season, October 2nd. That will be on the road. And I think that will be a phenomenal test of where this team is and how they're feeling and how they're playing and what their form's like going into the playoffs. With Messi, with Suarez, with Alba, with everyone available, how should Inter Miami face this team? How should they go about getting past one of the biggest threats in MLS?
It's hard to say because I think we're well suited to beating them without Messi and co than we are with Messi and co, because we're just a lot more expansive when we play with Messi. You just got to take your chances, man. You got to make sure you create chances, and you're going to concede goals against this team. You are, because it's just we don't have that level of stability in our defense unless we go and sign an absolute machine of a defender. We will concede against them. So you just got to outscore them, and you got to be very, very clinical. Luis Suarez, if he gets one chance in that game, he has to score that one chance. He can't take too many chances.
You're good. I agree with you. We have to take our chances. I also think how Tata Martino sets up the midfield is going to be hugely important. If you tell me, and I know this is unlikely, if you tell me we have Diego Gomez for that game, I would feel great because
100% better.
I think that game is going to be won and lost in the midfield. And Inter Miami has, especially with Luis Suarez and Lionel Messi, had a tendency to let the midfield go wide open, especially with Federico Redondo on the pitch. And so he's going to get better at that. I do believe that, but at least so far, it hasn't been phenomenal. And if we do that, we're gonna lose the game. The saving grace is that we have Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez and Robert Taylor, who can put 3 or 4 goals on anyone. I don't think their defense is phenomenal, actually. It's good, it's solid, it's not bad, but it's not like stifling in a way that you wouldn't feel good about Messi and Suarez breaking through. It's not a game where you feel like you have to luck into a 1-0 result. I think 3-2, a 4-3 type game is in the cards.
Is easily in the cards, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not super worried about them in terms of us scoring, but I think that they have a real chance to play through our midfield and be dangerous going the opposite way. And I think their coach is really good, and he's going to set them up to succeed. I really believe that. Anything else before we talk about our final team?
I think we've talked enough about Columbus.
Okay.
And I agree with this point that concentration is the key, because this team tends to play in moments during games, and we tend to concede goals when we're lacking concentration. And when we play a team like Columbus or Cincinnati, we need to be fully concentrated through the 90 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think when we get to the playoffs, we will be. But this is the first team we've faced where I think if Inter Miami plays its game, it's not a guaranteed win. I still think we're the favorite, but I don't think it's a guaranteed win. And I think the same is true against FC Cincinnati. I actually think Columbus is a little bit more dangerous than FC Cincinnati to me. But Cincinnati, I think, deserves this top spot, not because of a one-game matchup against them, but the point of this episode was to talk about the threats to us doing what we want to do. And if winning the Supporter Shield is one of them, FC Cincinnati is the team that would chase us down for that, could get home field advantage, could win the Supporter Shield. They won it last year. They are still very good. They lost Brandon Vasquez and they replaced him with Miles Robinson. And so as they entered the season, it was much more of a defensive team. They wanted to be very solid, and they do have a very good back line with Murphy and Yazga and Miles Robinson. But then I think everything changed when they went out and signed Kevin Kelsey, late in the window. And now they have a true goal-scoring threat that is sort of changed how I feel about that team. Talk to me about FC Cincinnati.
They beat Columbus Crew during the season. That was a 2-1 game, actually a really, really good game.
I think it was in Columbus too.
Yeah. They play a 3-5-2 as well, similar style to Columbus Crew, maybe a little bit more expansive, a little bit more dynamic comparatively. They float a lot with their wingbacks, with their fullbacks, and then play down the flanks and then try and connect in the midfield with the one and only Lucho Acosta. And yeah, they are a very direct team. They have DeAndre Yedlin in there, our former right back, who some say we shouldn't have let go of. But as you mentioned already, Kelsey is one important player for them. But Luciano Acosta, their number 10, just is a creative machine. League MVP this season, leading the pack, I believe. They've got Kubo, who I really like as a player. He can play everywhere and is a very, very good utility player. And then Obi, I'm going to butcher this last name, Nyobado, I believe is how you pronounce the last name. But Obi, I'm going to call him Obi, we mentioned we mentioned Nagby as the best defensive midfielder in the MLS. I would say Obi might just be, right up there in that conversation. So definitely a good player.
Yeah, Wobodo. Obina Wobodo. I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I don't know if that was right, but that was my best effort. I want to talk about their defense, though, because to me, that's what makes them special. They have that 3-man back line of guys that are all big and athletic and talented and strong. Miazga in the center of that park, I think, has been a really good leader and sort of field general for them. And then Miles Robinson and Ian Murphy with the athleticism to cover the sort of outside parts. But I actually think that might make them less dangerous to Inter Miami because they are confident in those three and they might not feel they need to defend as a team as much. Do you feel like that's a possibility, or do you think, no, those three guys are going to be really hard to break?
I do think with the three-man backline, there is more space for us to be able to stretch them out. And this is a team that, again, it's going to depend what style of play they use. But if they play the style of football that they're used to, then I would say, yes, you're right, that it's less dangerous for us as a team because we can have our wingers stretch them out and then exploit the midfield in the center and the spaces that they leave in behind. Maybe they're too experienced to do that. Maybe they know how to keep their shape really well, but it gives us a better chance if they play depending on their backline and don't use their entire 11 to try and create a lower block.
Yeah, and you used the word expansively with them, and I do think that's appropriate here in a way that it's true about Inter Miami, where sometimes we lose the compactness in the midfield and defensively. And I think the same thing happens to FC Cincinnati, where they do rely on their back line because they have good players. But I'm not like, how do I put this? Miazga and Robinson are good defenders, and so is Ian Murphy. But I don't think they're like going to stop Lionel Messi, right? I think you do that as a team. And I don't necessarily think they are, always entirely compact. I do think they let some space open in the midfield, and they use that to their advantage because it lets them release Lucho Acosta, who has been phenomenal. He won the MVP last year. He's right there, probably below Chicho Arango right now, but right there in the MVP race. And then I think Kevin Kelsey, I think he makes all the difference for them because he gives them that really pacey, athletic forward that can do the thing that Inter Miami struggles with. So I think if the midfield ends up being wide open, it can kind of be a back and forth game. And I don't necessarily think that hurts Inter Miami. I think that they can play through that relatively well, and then they just have to beat their defenders one-on-one. But when the game gets really open like that, you can see it going, both teams really have an opportunity, and I think Cincinnati has the quality to make those chances happen.
Do you think this is the team that's more similar in quality and play style to Inter Miami than any other team in the East?
I don't know about play style, but I think probably in terms of quality, yes, where they have a couple like stars and they rely on individual talent more so than, relying on a system.
Coherent, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think in that sense, probably, at least in the East, I would say the Galaxy and the LAFC are probably more like that in the West, more like us in the West. But in the East, I think they are the most Inter Miami-like. Well, maybe Toronto actually. But yeah. And then Lucho Costa is phenomenal. I know we've said his name a couple times, but he's so good. He's, when we play Cincinnati, if Messi's not on the field and Suarez is not on the field, which is going to be the case when we play them in 2 weeks or so, he's going to be the best player on the field. We play them July 6th. So in 3 weeks, we'll play them. Maybe 4 weeks, I guess. He's going to be the best player on the field if we don't have Suarez and Messi back, I think. You agree, disagree?
I completely agree with you.
I'm sorry. Not including Robert Taylor, of course.
Of course. Robert Taylor is beyond comparison with any other player, right? So we don't even include him in the conversation. By the way, guys, if you want to see the injustice that happened to Robert Taylor this past week, go and check out our previous podcast where Scotty decided to ruin our list of players, and Robert Taylor didn't even make it in the top 5, and I'm absolutely furious about it. Coming back to FC Cincinnati, yeah, I agree with you, man. He's going to definitely have something to say in that particular game, and we're going to have to contain him. One thing that I'm really excited to see is us playing these teams like Cincinnati, Columbus without Messi, because that gives us a really good yardstick of where we are as a team and how we match up to them. And regardless of, of course, in the playoffs, this is going to be a completely different dynamic, and the teams are going to be a lot more motivated. But if we can get a result out from these games against some of these big teams without Messi, that's going to do a world of confidence to our world of good to our confidence as a team, and is really going to help us push forward.
Okay, let's go competition by competition, and give me the 3 teams you're most worried about for the Leagues Cup in terms of us repeating.
Club America. I will say Columbus Crew. And then third team, Nashville, because I hate Nashville.
Yeah, I think that's a good list. I will say I think Columbus is going to be really good and dangerous in that tournament. I think LAFC, they're going to have some new players, some new star players, and the LA Galaxy and Club America. So I guess I'll take out the Columbus Crew. I'll go the 2 LA teams and Club America as the 3 most dangerous teams for that competition. Especially if Club America is in the Central or the East, where we might play them before the final. They could be a dangerous team. Okay, Supporter Shield. I know that Inter Miami's top of the table. The next 3 are RSL, Cincinnati,
Yep.
and I believe LAFC now. Are those the 3 teams you're most worried about? NYCFC is right there. The Red Bulls, Minnesota. What are the
Columbus
teams
Crew as well. I think Columbus is going to rise up, man. They've only played 14 games. They've got 4 games in hand. They got 24 points right now. So if they win all 4 of their games, they're on 36 points. So they're right in the mix. And they'll be above Inter Miami in that case. So they're right in the mix. But yes, I think it's going to be Cincinnati, LAFC, and Real Salt Lake that are going to be the dangerous teams for the Supporter Shield. In fact, I think someone like a Real Salt Lake could definitely eke through that top spot.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the Columbus Crew at all. I don't think they have. I don't think they have any chance of winning the Supporter Shield. This has just been an exhausting season for them. I think they might actually have a couple bad games now that they kind of can relax after the CONCACAF Champions Cup. I still think they'll be good and they'll get back into form, but I think they might have a little bit of a reset here. FC Cincinnati, I think is going to be right there the whole time. RSL, I think is going to be right there the whole time. And then I will go with LAFC. I agree. I think those 3 are the most likely to win the Supporter Shield if it's not Inter Miami. And then the MLS Cup. We've talked about every team in the MLS today. Who are the 3 teams you think are most likely to, stop Inter Miami from winning the MLS Cup?
FC Cincinnati, obviously. Columbus Crew, obviously. And then LA Galaxy for me.
I'm going to throw the Red Bulls in there because I think if they play the way that they play and Inter Miami doesn't have a great game, I think that they can beat Inter Miami. I think they're my 3rd most likely to upset Inter Miami. I think the Columbus Crew are probably my favorite, or the team I'm most afraid of in that sort of knockout style tournament. And then I will probably go with the LA Galaxy number 2 if we do face them in the final, because I think they have everything they need to beat Inter Miami, especially in a neutral site game. And I think this exercise of going through every team shows me the importance of us winning the Supporter Shield so that we get home field advantage throughout the playoffs.
Yep.
Because I don't want to go on the road to a lot of these teams. Anything else before we wrap it up? Anything else on your mind? Any international soccer that you want to talk about?
Yeah, guys, watch out for the Netherlands because they're going to be a dark horse in the Euros this time around, and they're definitely going to make it to the final and maybe even win it.
Let me get you on the record right now. Who do you think is going to win the Euros, and who do you think is going to win the Copa America?
The Dutch, obviously. The Dutch are going to win the Euros. That's undoubtedly. And then Copa America, maybe Brazil, man. Brazil might have a good chance. I'm going to go with Brazil.
I see you just liking the favorite there. I think that you should watch out for Colombia and Uruguay in the Copa America. I think they might have a bigger thing, more to say about this tournament than we expect. I know Argentina and Brazil are the obvious favorites, but I could see either of them sort of dropping out
making a run. Yeah.
And then for the Euros, I think that it's going to be England and France, man. I really do. I think they're the 2 most talented teams in Europe, and one of those teams is going to win. Probably France, because I think England's more talented, but I think their coach is awful. So I'm going to go with England And listen, you can revise these picks if you want when we get a little closer to those tournaments.
You're forgetting
Guys,
Portugal is really good as well, and then
Portugal's
Dutch
very
are
good.
right up there.
Portugal's very good, and I think the Netherlands are a team you should root for if you want to see some upsets. Guys, this was a lot of fun. I'm going to cut him off so he can't give any more Dutch propaganda. Talk to me in the comments section if you enjoyed us doing a Saturday podcast. I know normally on Saturday we'll do the pregame show, so we get a chance to interact with you guys. But in weeks where there's no games, talk to me if you like it, because I've always thought that there hasn't been enough sort of podcast content during the weekends. And so whenever it's Sunday and I'm going to the gym, I don't have anything to listen to because a lot of my favorite podcasts are sort of Monday through Friday type deals. So let us know if you enjoyed that. We will be back on Wednesday for our last midweek episode before we get back into the schedule. And we'll be back next Saturday with the pregame show an hour before kickoff. And other than that, we appreciate you guys being here. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for being in the chat, and we'll see you guys next time. Have a wonderful day.